Hi, everyone. I'm Steve Varga, and today I'll be taking you through the July 11th, 2023 release of DB Precision, version 2022.23.7.11. If you have any questions about what we go over during this video, please call 860-540-3690 or email us at support@PensionSoft.com. In this version, we've focused on more client-specific requests than usual, so you may find that a majority of the items we go over today may not have applicability to your setups. Hopefully, however, a handful of these items help you continue to optimize your use of DB Precision and the pension portal. To start, we've added a new option to the sponsor assumption definition screen. So going to assumption definitions within the sponsor screen, we've added the ability to override a base projection value for a reported amount and reference a user value. So going into a reported amount setup in an assumption definition, we now see a new option at the bottom of the screen. It says override projection based with user value 1. The idea here is that a participant on the portal may want to use a different salary to project off of other than their current salary. Let's say this year, they only worked half the year. Their earnings for this year are a little lower than they would want to project off of. You can indicate that you want to start projecting using the user value input on the portal screen. And then from there, the system would layer on projection increases or a level future 0% increase like we see on the screen here based off of that amount. For work track requests, we've added the ability to indicate that a payment may only begin on the last day of the month. So go to work track tasks. We go to configure the internet portal rights access for this work track task. We have a checkbox here below the only allow on first of the month checkbox. We now have a checkbox saying we only allow payment start dates on the last of the month. We've also included the ability to specify timing for completion and or authorization for a step using days or working days when these dates appear on a work track report. So the idea here is that a particular step may have estimated timing that you can input on the screen here on the right-hand side. You can indicate that you want to use days or working days and then input the number of days you have here. For sponsor amount properties, we now allow users to view sponsor amount properties such as modified date and modified user information by right-clicking an amount. So sponsor amounts are included in the multi-employer/group items tree branch. I right-click on this amount to view the amounts, and then I can right-click on this amount to view the properties of this particular value. What it says here is this was created by me a couple days ago. For alternate identifiers, we've now added the ability to store additional identifiers for plan documents and person records. For plan documents, that's going to reside right here. We now have an input for an alternate identifier. This will be used at first only by particular clients that have opted into this. So this will be disabled for your setup as we continue to modify the functionality that comes with this. But for now, you can disregard this input. And then for participants as well, you'll see that you have the ability to add in an alternate identifier. This will be an alphanumeric code for a particular person. So you can identify a person by more than just an SSN. Moving on to the plan document enhancements, we've added a get plan number function. Like this right here. This returns the plan number of the open plan. So in this case, I have plan 001 open, so this would return a 1. If I had a different plan number open, it would return that plan number. You can't calculate within just a sponsor, you always have to calculate through a plan. So there will always be a plan number that gets returned using this function. This can be useful if you have multiple plans set up for your sponsor and you wanted to keep the setups identical. Maybe you wanted to copy and paste each plan onto the others, utilize the same programming throughout. This would allow you to change your formula values based off of what plan you're in at that moment. So you can say something like, if get plan number equals 1, return the NRD for plan 1. Otherwise, return the NRD for plan 2, something along those lines. The get his date function, we now allow for the optional specification of an earliest and latest date when searching for a date. So we go to get his date right here. We now have the ability to not only say, I want to get the first hire date for a person, which is what we're saying here with the combination of inputs on this function. But we now say that we want to use 1/1/2010 as the start date for searching for that first hire date. So we want to return the first hire date as of 1/1/2010 for this person. You can also indicate a latest date as well if you're searching for hire dates again from the first or from the latest point of view. We've also added optional parameters to the get then latest function. We now have an index that is optional at the end of the formula function syntax. Right here, we have a 2 in this last input. What this does is it allows us to pull a benefit other than the latest. So by default, by definition, the get ben latest function will get you the latest benefit for a person. But if a person had 2 benefits within the same plan, let's say they had a retirement benefit and a beneficiary benefit, having a index of 2 there would get you the second latest benefit for a person. This allows you to return multiple benefit information or multiple pieces of information for multiple benefits in formulas where previously you couldn't do that. For exports, we made some enhancements there as well. For export messages, or sorry, for benefit payment set export detail, we have added the ability to export all the details from the 415B limit page. So what this looks like is if I go into a benefit row and we're exporting items from benefits ret, previously you could export things like date first vested or optional form amounts, but now you'll see you have quite a few 415B detail amounts that you can export, all available to you there automatically. For export messages, we now added operands for NRD, earliest retirement date, date first vested, and date fully vested. Those can be found in the messages section of an export definition. So right here, I've set up the salary scale formula derived item to be calculated. And if that value returns a 1, then this following message would show. Instead of seeing the bracketed NRD in the message, they would see their actual normal retirement date on screen here if they ran this on the portal. For export formatting, we now include a new option to hide country address if the country address is USA. So if we go to the person's country right here, we now have the ability to say blank if USA. So if you have USA or United States of America or any form of United States in the person's record for their address, if you select this toggle, then the system will not export, will export a blank instead of exporting United States. That can just be helpful if you're displaying address information. And this is pretty common if you don't want to display USA, but you do want to account for people that do live overseas. You can do so this way. We also added the ability to, for space delimited exports, zero fill a numeric value. So in a text file, which would be created if you select a space delimited file type, here we see that we have starting columns and ending columns that are different from one another. So for example, on CSV, there's just one column for SSN. The starting column and ending column both be 1. Here we have column 1 through column 9 representing the digits of the SSN, followed by some other items here. So based off of the starting column and the ending column that you select, if you select zero fill, then the number of columns that are blank will be zero filled for you. That's how that gets driven there. So it's still just a decimal input to indicate how many decimals you'd like to run out to, but then everything prior to that will be zero filled for you. For person validations, when we're checking for consecutive historical dates, So for example, if we have a person validation definition set up here, we have a consecutive historical dates standard error that we can return in our validations. If I run this, what we'll now see is that we now flag any combination of consecutive termination dates as a possible error. So previously, in order to have this error get flagged for you, you'd have to have two consecutive dates that were identical classifications, such as two termination voluntary dates or two leave of absence paid dates. But we realized is that we want to actually flag two consecutive termination of any types so that you can go ahead and try to add a missing hire date in between those two dates, for example, or delete one of them if one of them is incorrect. For work track form benefits, we now allow benefit amount details in work track to be edited. So if I were to go to tools, manage workflow, and go to one of the participants here that has a work track task, if you have enabled benefit options to be calculated for your work track task and you've done so already, you can now go into any of the rows here and change the amount of the optional form and have that flow through your work track. For the security report, we now include a new tab that shows which work track tasks are accessible via the portal. So if we go to System and Security Reports, this will give us information that tells us about what kind of security settings we have across the different items on our setup. So one of those items would be work track and who has access to those work track items across all the sponsors on your setup. On the portal, we now included additional logic to better determine the default plan to use when opening a participant on the portal. So what this means, if you have more than one plan, and let's say a particular person is both a term vested and a term non-vested for one of the plans and the other plan, the system will make sure that it prioritizes the plan in which they're more close to active than the other. So the person would see the plan information on the home screen for the plan that they're terminated vested in and not the plan that they're terminated non-vested in. Same thing, if they were active in one plan and term vested in another, the plan that they're active in would show as opposed to the one that they're term vested in. Lastly, for alternate servers, when you're connected to a server other than production, such as a test server, the DB Precision caption bar, which appears at the top of the screen right here where my mouse is, if you can see my mouse on the video, at the top of the screen right now it says DB Precision connected to production server. That bar will turn red if you're not on production right now. What that does is it allows you as a user to more easily identify whether you are in the test server or not. For when you're switching back and forth from one server to another, it can just be a little helpful there. That's it for today's video. If you have any questions about what you've seen today, please call 860-540-3690 or email us at support@PensionSoft.com. Right, thanks.